especially in a big city, the city is so big. So like you have to make it smaller. You have to like kind of bring the community that you want like to you.
Yeah. Join clubs or groups with where you have common interests of some sort, friends of friends. I feel like that was the biggest thing for me to tap into.
I want to do something with people and I want to get people together. So let me start it. When you're in your 20s, honestly, maybe even more like your late 20s, early 30s, I feel like that really is when you find your group.
As an adult, you don't have that built-in social structure of school where you're around everyone for 8 to 10 hours a day. In your 20s and 30s, you're working long hours and you may never really be around people in your same cohort. Inherently, you have to be more vulnerable than you have before and put yourself out there to make friends. Building community and having people to lean on is undoubtedly worth any potential awkwardness, especially in this loneliness epidemic that we're in. Today, we're eating oysters and oversharing about making friends in your 20s and 30s and what has worked for my good friend Dakota, who post-undergrad built her network from the ground up in a new city. If you're new here, I'm Kimmy. I'm 30 years old, living in New York City, working in technology audit consulting, and welcome to On Our Way, a channel where we talk about navigating careers and life through the lens of being women. Without further ado, let's get on our way. I was introduced to Dakota through my college best friend, Lindsay. Lindsay lived with Dakota when she was in grad school here in New York City, moved out of New York, and then I started to really get to know Dakota a lot better.
Great times for me.
I didn't have many friends in the time in the city post-COVID, and Dakota was gracious enough to invite me to the many parties that her and her roommates threw, from Galentine's and Hanukkah to Friendsgiving. I always admired just how many people showed up to these and how big Dakota's network seemed. Dakota, like me, did not go to undergrad in New York City, so seeing her having built this network in her 20s really inspired me to put myself out there and do the same thing. So welcome, Dakota, to On Our Way for a little oysters and oversharing. Since Dakota does not eat oysters, she'll be dining on Madeline's today, so a little cheers to that.
Cheers, yes. I'm sorry. I was like dump it all over your chair.
Oh no, you're good. I just realized I'm like right into the... So to get us started, Dakota, tell us about what your friend circle looked like when you were a kid. Did you have a couple very close friends, or were you someone that had a lot of acquaintances, a large group of friends? What that kind of look like for you?
So not to make this my entire personality, but I do think that being an only child played into it a lot. Not to say that like if you have siblings, you automatically are best friends with them or do everything with them, but I do think you have a little bit of that built-in person who's kind of always at home, or somebody who you can go do things with. So because I didn't have that, friendships were really meaningful, and like being with other kids my age meant that I had to go out and like seek other people. It wasn't like it would automatically come to me. My parents were older when they had me, so a lot of the friends that they had were also older, or their kids were much older, and like all of my cousins were a lot older than me. So I was very comfortable being around adults and like older kids, I guess. But then in terms of like finding my own friends, I think it also started with, I grew up in an apartment building, and all the apartments faced like into a courtyard. Mm-hmm. And so it was mostly like single people who lived there. But like anytime there was a kid, I would be like, oh my God, this is a friend. This is my chance. This is amazing. So I feel like a lot of it started off with that, like just people who were like in the building. And I always wanted to like have a sister or have a brother or whatever it was. So I felt like I could sort of turn these friends into something even deeper, like have it be that person who I really could like connect with. And because we lived in the same place, in the same building, I would see them really often. And then my mom was very big on, both my parents were very big on having me be in a lot of like after school activities. So I was constantly like meeting other kids, being around other people. I feel like I'm extroverted by nature. I definitely need like my introvert alone time after I've been with people for like a while, but I think naturally I'm very drawn to being with other people, wanting to form those connections, and having something just outside of my parents. I think that's the base of it, was like having as many people around as possible who I could connect with. And then as I got older, I think it started to become about like quality versus quantity.
More intentional.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Snack time.
Yeah, snack time. And two, I feel like with your, because you're, I guess, I don't know if you would consider a best friend. It seems like your best friend is also an only child, right? Who you live with now. Right. So that's probably makes sense because the kids that grow up with siblings, like you were saying, there is that built in. So maybe they're less eager to like go out and find it because they're like, wait, I have a sister, even if you fight, whatever, like you're probably best friends at the end of the day. Versus the other only children are like mano a mano kind of thing.
I feel like only children, we have like that weird like antenna detector where it's like, I know you also are lonely. Come be lonely with me. So I feel like, that was my oldest friend I've known since we were 7. So we've known each other for over 20 years at this point, which is crazy. But she was also is an only child. So there was a lot of like, we would always hang out with each other because we didn't have siblings to hang out with. But then I always liked hanging out with kids who did have siblings too, because I felt like I could sort of see what that was like from that perspective.
And then come home to your quiet.
Correct. And be like, great, I don't have to deal with like all the annoyances. Yeah. But yeah, so I feel like that was the base of it, was just trying to make sure that like, I think my parents were like, we want to make sure that she has like social time. So like make sure that she has friends, make sure she's seeing people, doing activities with other people. And I did meet a lot of people, not that I'm necessarily still super close friends with people from that stage of my life, but like I met a lot of people through the activities that I did too as a kid. Yeah. So that was super nice.
That makes sense. So what did your friendships look like in like middle and high school, like getting a little bit older?
So I feel like, kind of ending with elementary school, I feel like I had friends sort of like outside of school who I was closer with. And then middle and high school was nice because that's where I felt like I started to really connect with the people who I was going to school with. My elementary school was like all kids kind of like from my neighborhood. And then middle and high school, like the different schools would like come together from other neighborhoods. So I was introduced to so many new people who I hadn't known before. So middle and high school was great because I feel like I had like a group inside school for the first time, which was really nice. I went to really big schools, so it wasn't like in the movies where it was like, this is the popular group and this is the, it was just so big. So like everybody kind of had their group, which was really nice. And in middle and high school, I had like, it was a really great group. We had like boys and girls in the group, which was really nice. I'm thinking like kind of specifically in high school, we had like our spot for lunch, and like every day, no matter what, we would like meet there, and like that's where we had lunch together. And some of us were in classes together, some of us weren't. And it was just a really great, like I felt really lucky because I feel like that sometimes doesn't happen, or like if you go to a smaller school, or like maybe you just can't find your people. And I always remember thinking like, this is so nice that like I feel like I can come to school every day and like I have a group and like we can talk about anything from like really silly stuff to like important, deeper emotional things. And it was just a really
like grounding group.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. I miss that sometimes. I mean, I feel very lucky with the friendships that I have now, but like just I don't know how like simple that time was, and you take it for granted a little bit, where you're like, we're always going to have this group and we're always going to, catch up and be with each other. But I do also remember one of my friends who I'm still friends with, I've known her since 6th grade. I remember one time saying to her, like, thank you so much for being my friend. And she kind of looked at me and was like, why are you thanking me for being, like, what do you mean? Like, of course, we're friends. But like, I do remember thinking like, she doesn't have to be my friend. Like, she is actively choosing to accept my weirdness and quirks and accept all of this. But I'll always forget that. I will not. I'll always remember that. That it meant so much to me that the people who I was with chose to accept me into their group, because I mean, not that I was like insanely weird or anything, but like, I got my little quirks. So I'm like, it was just very meaningful that people would say, hey, like, you're fine. We want you in our life. Yeah.
And I feel like that's a thing too with being in school. Like you have that structured of, you're going to see these people like 8 hours a day. Yep. You all get off at the same time versus like, now you being a teacher, me a consultant, like we get off work at the same time. We don't, our days don't look the same. So it's like, it's such a special time in your life to like be around all those people and have that structure where like you can enjoy people's company. If that makes sense. So cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Well,
I'm like, will I get through all? You can get through all 6 of these.
I will get through all these.
In an attempt.
So you went to undergrad at Lesley College in Boston, and you moved to New York City for grad school 9 years ago. Just wild. What did the first couple years of living in New York look like socially for you?
So this was different. This is where my life changed. This for the not so better at first, but so like we'd said, elementary, middle school, high school, lots of friends, lots of after school activities, all great stuff. Then I went to college, and my first year I went to a school that just wasn't quite the right fit for me, and so I didn't really find a lot of people who I could connect with, and it was very weird and isolating because I had gone from having such amazing friends and a lot of friends who I'd been friends with for a very long time, and I went to school, in a different state that I grew up in, and so I just didn't really have anyone there, and I was suddenly like, oh whoa, this is like weird. I haven't had to make new friends since like middle school practically, so that was tough. So I ended up transferring, and I transferred to a very small school. Lesley is a tiny school, and so by the time I had gotten there as a sophomore, everybody who was my age kind of had been there freshman year, and most people had already found their group, which was really great. But then I still have some close friends, like very close friends from college who I'm still in touch with. But that first year, I feel so bad because one of my roommates from that year, who I'm still very close friends with, I feel like I just like, do oysters cling to things, or is that barnacles? I guess that's barnacles.
Cling to oysters.
Okay, so like a barnacle, I just kind of stuck right onto her, and I was like, you are a wonderful, amazing friend, and you are one friend, and that's all I need, because that's it. And that, I think, that was not a good strategy by any means, and I feel like I got kind of almost like disappointed in myself, where I was like, well, I used to have people, and now I'm like afraid to put myself out there and talk to people and make these friends. And there were like some groups. There was this one group of girls, and I think there were like 5 of them, and they were all like so nice and so cool, and they met freshman year, and they all like lived together, and I was like, wow, like I wish I want that. I wish I had that. And like, obviously, of course, like group dynamics, there's always like issues. You don't know the full story, but like I was kind of like, oh wow, I have like a couple people who I hang out with all the time. And I have family in Boston, so I think I was kind of like, well, I do have family, so if I feel like I need that connection, I can be with family, but it's different. Like when you're in college, you're not with your family all the time. So that was weird. That wasn't exactly my favorite time. Like, once again, so grateful for the friends that I do have and have kept since then, but it was kind of a weird dynamic switch.
It's also a lot of pressure on those like small amount of relationships.
Yeah.
Than spreading the love.
Correct. And then for grad school, I moved to New York, and once again, I have like my family, parts of my family are from New York. We have a lot of family friends here, and I had wanted to move to New York forever, basically. But that was a really weird time, those first couple of years.
You moved to New York after undergrad, right?
Directly after
early
undergrad.
20s.
Yeah. So I was, I guess, 22, 23. Yeah. And I had some great, like at Lesley, I was friends with my roommates. And that's kind of who I stuck with. And so I sort of assumed, I was like, okay, like my new New York roommate is going to, we'll be best friends. And she was very busy and had her own life here and her own friends. And so I was kind of like, oh, no, what do I do? Where do I go? And grad school was once again, I don't know where I got these assumptions from, but I made the assumption, I was like, oh, grad school is like undergrad. Like you're with each other all the time, you hang out. Grad school is very different. I went to TC, Teachers College, and like...
Which is Columbia, so
I know.
Party pants over here.
I never say that because everybody's always like, oh, they're connected. They have something to do with each other. But yes, so Columbia.
But it is, so.
Columbia, technically, yes. My program for teaching was very small. It was like a small cohort, and it was such a mix of people. It was like older women with husbands and children, older men who were working and like, you know, coming to night school or whatever. Like it was not just like a bunch of 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and we were like all in it together. So small program, lots of different, and also nobody was living on campus. So, and we had classes, some of them were during the day, but some of them were at night. So it's like afterwards, a lot of people were working the next day. So it's like, we weren't going to like go hang out. So, so that was tough. That was not, I don't know, that was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And once again, I got this weird thing of like, I don't know, like maybe I'm not like, not good enough, but like this is hard. I feel making friends is like really difficult here. And I thought,
like, is it easier for other people?
Yeah. And I just assumed, because I love New York so much and I always wanted to show up there. And then all of a sudden I was there and I was like, wait, I'm in the city that I've always wanted to be in, but I don't have any friends. Like, so what do I do things with? And who do I do things with? And there were definitely that first year, like some weekends where I would like come home on a Friday and I would not leave the apartment until like Monday, which was like, I feel sad looking back on it, because I'm like, I know now that like, I know strategies now that would have helped me then. Which we will get into. So stay tuned. But yeah, so that was very odd. But then Lindsay showed up and I was like, oh my God, okay, this is great. So yeah, so that was really incredible, because then she was there and she became a very close friend and we did so much together. And then I had kind of basically like one other friend who I was like doing a lot of things with. But once again, I kind of had that weird feeling where I was like, okay, I'm basically hanging out with two people. Like I'm hanging out with like Lindsay during the week and then my other friend on the weekend. And that's like kind of it. Yeah. And these are lovely people. Nothing wrong with spending time with them. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I do feel like I should be doing other things with other people. Like it's too much to just do things with two people all the time. So that was grad school.
How long was grad? It was like 2
years?
So
that was like
22 to 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was 2 years, and having Lindsay be there was super helpful. But yes, that was an odd time friend wise. I just felt very like just kind of lonely, and like but I wasn't also doing anything to help myself feel less lonely. So it gets better, but
don't worry.
But it was weird in that specific time frame.
Yeah. And when do you feel? When do you feel like you did finally, you kind of alluded to it, but like hit your stride with making friends, where you didn't feel like, okay, I have these people and I love these people, but like I need a little bit more. Like it's just a little bit too focused on like those two people.
Yeah. So I think it was when the weekends would roll around, because my weeks are very structured as a teacher. Like every hour of my day is very structured. And like after work, I would be grading or lesson planning or whatever. But then the weekends would roll around and I would have all this unstructured time. And like, you know, if Lindsay was out for the weekend or if my other friend wasn't available or whatever, and I suddenly was like, I have these 48 hours and I literally just don't know what to do with them. Like, I don't mind doing things by myself. Like I love going to see movies by myself. I'll go to a museum by myself. Like that's all lovely, but I also do like to do activities with other people.
Share it with someone. Share
the experience. So finally, I remember my childhood friend who I live with now. So this was like 2 years ago, kind of like when this was all happening. And I think I was at her house during the summer. But I remember being like, okay, I'm kind of tired of like feeling sorry for myself and feeling like, you know, I can't do anything with anyone and I don't have anyone to do anything with. I need to join some groups. Like I need to like go out and like meet people in a different way. And so I went on to meetup.com, which felt so scary at the time, because this is obviously, of course, not the case by any means. But I did have this really preconceived idea of like, that's for losers. Like that's for weirdos and people who can't find friends.
Especially when like, it's not like you've been someone that's like you've had groups of friends before.
Right.
So to feel that way is like, oh, what's going on?
Right. Like it felt like I sort of had to manufacture a friend group, which I had not done before. I just met people naturally through the school or things that I did. So I went on to meetup.com and I was like, okay, what are things that I like enjoy?
Yeah.
What are things that I like? Because once again, when I was elementary, middle, high school, college, I just did a lot of stuff like after school. So I was like, what are some things that I like? And so I'm an English teacher, and the like really bad joke was that like I honestly had not really read that many books in like a really long time. And it was embarrassing. It was like bad. So I was like, okay, what about a book club? Like that would get me to read like a normal person. And like book club people are nice. Like they're just like nice people. So, so we ended up joining 2 book clubs, actually. One of them was like a young adult book club, which I was like, that's perfect, because then I can like have books that I can recommend to my students. And then this other one was like a brunch book club kind of thing. So like you got brunch and you got the book, like you got to talk about the book. But I remember like when I first started going to them, I was like, oh God, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, this is nerve wracking. Like, I feel like I'm going on a date or something. It's like, it's a lot. But then I ended up meeting some really incredible people because, of course, the fear of it is always like way bigger than what it actually is. But having that common thing, like if you're just at a house party or if you're at a bar or something, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating because there's no like entry point. It's just kind of like, well, we're here and whatever. But when you have like a thing that you're all there for, you can start with that and then you can start talking about other things. So like, you know, we would start by talking about the book and then it would be like, oh, what other books do you read? What else do you do in your free time? What do you do for work? Like it opens up the conversation without it being awkward. So that was great. And then I've met some really amazing people through the book club who I'm still, you know, friends with now, which has been, I was proud of myself for that one. I was like, it's, you know, putting yourself out there and just not being like afraid, which this is not like, I mean, everybody knows this, of course, but it's like, it really is like what is kind of the worst that can happen? Like if you go and you don't really vibe with the people, all right, so you don't have to see them again. And if you do, then you end up having these friendships that can last for a really long time, which is super nice. I did those 2 book clubs. And then there's a podcast so a podcaster who I found during COVID, and she was an influencer and then she had a podcast and I was following her, blah, 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 and I liked her stuff. And then one day she was like, in different cities, people are creating like podcast clubs. So it's like people will either listen to the podcast or just know about my stuff. And then everybody gets together and talks about it or has fun with it. And there was one in New York City and she posted about it. And I was like, oh, wait. That could be kind of fun because like I do like her and I do like her podcast and it seems like a really fun like group of women who like would all just like this same podcast. So I started going and it's like an activity podcast club, if you will. So like we meet once a month and we do like a fun activity and we don't necessarily have to talk about the podcast every single time, but once again, that entry point of like you can talk about that and then you can start talking about other things. And so that was great because I've met really amazing people through that, and also I get to like go out and do these really fun activities which is just also really fun.
What's like an example of an activity? I'm curious.
So we just did trivia last week, which was super fun. We went to see a basketball game, New York Liberties.
So we have varying levels of activities.
Yeah. We did one of the, I keep wanting to say girls, we're not girls. One of the women who's in it, she does workout classes, and so she like taught one for us, and then we went out and like got burgers afterwards. And we did like a mini golf. Like just super fun. And also because we live in New York City, there's so much to do here. So I feel like I now also get an opportunity to do all these things, which maybe I wouldn't have, you know, chosen to do some of these things on my own. And then also like reaching out or like making friends with friends of friends too, which I think is really not as intimidating. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, whoever you're friends with is going to have good friends. Yeah. So like that you would, you know, naturally probably get along. So yeah, I would say honestly within like the past couple of years, I got over the fear of like going to join these kind of random activities or being with random people. And I think once you do it once, then it's like, you're like, oh, right. Why was I like nervous about this? Like, it's very fine and very normal. And people do it all the time. It is not for losers. It's not for weirdos. It's not. My friend who I live with, so she was talking about this, and she was like, especially in a big city, the city is so big. So like you have to make it smaller. You have to like kind of bring the community that you want like to you.
Yeah.
And it makes it less intimidating.
Some of the tactics for anyone paying attention was to like join clubs or groups with where you have common interests of some sort. So yeah, books. You were saying that podcast club. I know my sister joined one. I wish I could remember the name recently, where it's like, it's for like a group of 10 people, and they'll go to like a random restaurant, and then afterwards you go to like a comedy club or something like that. And it's like guys, girls. So like obviously some people go into it like, ooh, dating or whatever. But some people are more just like making friends. But it's still a structured thing where you're going to get yourself out of your apartment and you have something to talk about, even if it's like, wow, this activity sucks or whatever, like that they picked. Like it's something to talk about, not just, I don't know, contrived. And friends of friends. I feel like that was the biggest thing for me to tap into, because I was so nervous to put myself out there. Same thing, being just like, well, like what if they don't like me? Or even recently, someone I met at one of Dakota's party, your birthday party, then I reached out to get coffee, and I was like, what if she like doesn't want to get coffee with me? And I was like, what's the worst thing? I was like, one, she would just say like, I'm busy, and lie, and I would get the hint. And I feel like if anyone reaches out to me, I'm never like, oh, what's this weirdo I'm like, oh my God, that's so nice of you to reach out to me. Like, I'm not...
You feel like liked.
Wanted. Thank you. And I feel like what Dakota, you did, which was really nice, was like you opened up your circles that you started making, and Dakota actually made her own book club that I am now a member in, and which is awesome, because that now I'm meeting people I wouldn't meet, or maybe I would meet them like every year at your birthday party or something, like very in passing, and not like have the time to, you know, connect with them. And like you were saying, we talk about the book for a little bit, like it is something to talk about, but then it's like, I don't know, talking about like someone went traveled somewhere, let's talk about that, or like someone has baby, you know, like you can
nice, like catch up time.
Exactly. And like not forced in a bad way, but structured kind of time. But so that was, I feel like we've covered a big arc here pretty quickly. So, you know, went from kind of feeling a little lost and feeling like you have a couple really good friends to joining groups, reaching out to friends of friends, and really digging into that network, and then starting your own network and like starting your own book club. So I don't know if you want to talk like a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was really fun. Like I had never like started anything before. I was like, this is really fun. I'm asking people, and people like want to be in it, and they want to like make this time commitment to do this like once a month and read an entire book and like come and talk about it, and then also like just chat about life and dilly-dally and whatever. But that was very special, because I think it, like going back to telling my friend like thanks for being my friend, you know, just like the confidence that I was lacking, and not to say that I suddenly have a ton of it, but like I do think that was really helpful, of like, okay, I really want to I want to do something with people, and I want to get people together, so let me start it. And it could be anything, like any group, any club, anything, and it can start off with, you know, small group, and then you mix it up and have it be a bunch of people or whatever it is. But I think it also, when I moved to my second apartment, we did a lot of hosting, which was really, really fun. Once again, had never hosted, never done anything like that before. And that was great too, because we had the 3 different roommates, and everybody was bringing their own friends. And so we were doing Halloween, Friendsgiving, Valentine's Day, birthdays, Hanukkah parties, like there probably were more. Yeah, like a couple.
It seemed like every random month I was getting like a party. And it was some like random event. But you guys always made it so much fun.
It was so fun. And that, once again, was another great way. And not that like everybody who came had to suddenly become best friends, but like it was such a nice way of bringing people together and being in control. Now maybe that also plays into my wanting to be in control of everything problems. That's for therapy. But like it does feel like really special to kind of be like, I'm hosting this.
Well, you're like the facilitator. So you're bringing, maybe not like in control, like in the like what they're doing. But
right.
Like you're bringing people together, and they're all people that you value. So it's always nice to get to see like, oh wait, like I like this, like obviously you like this friend, and this friend, it's like, oh, it's nice to see them connect in their own right.
Right. And that's like maybe a little easier said than done, but like if you are searching for friends to like, I've heard of people doing that too, where it's like, I don't know what the like official name of it is, but it's like, I'm going to bring my friends together and every friend has to bring another friend to the party. And then you have like a big group of all these people and everybody can mix and mingle and mix and match. And
this arc we're building of, you know, joining different groups, reaching out to friends of friends, like kind of putting yourself out there and then being the connector. I think it's really important to like not pay it forward a little bit, and that if you like are in a place where, you know, you do have a lot of friends, don't be shy and being like, you know what, Dakota, you love XYZ, and like I have another friend, like we should all get brunch, you know, because then everyone is closer friends because of it. Like, don't hoard your friends, like connect people. Yeah, and if, you know, they hang out one-on-one, like that's awesome, because then you were the one that did it, if that makes sense. Right. And talking about obviously groups and like the structured, you know, of some of those structured groups like have events. I feel like you always have such fun activities. Like I'm just like, you want to get brunch, and Dakota's like, you want to go to this like Irish river dancing? I'm like, sure. So how do you find these, for one? Yeah. And do you have any advice? Because I feel like that's often a thing of like, especially living in a city, maybe outside of a city, you'd like go to someone's house. But here I feel like we're like, people go places like to a cafe, get coffee, Irish river dancing event, whatever it may be. How do you find those activities, and do you have any suggestions for friend hangout activities?
I love an activity. Like, an activity gives me so much joy. I think, once again, you know, growing up doing a lot of activities. Like I grew up in LA. I went to college in Boston, went to grad school in New York. So I've only ever lived in really big cities where there are just always tons of activities and things to do. And so there is something so special about like finding like a random thing and being like, hey, you want to go do this really random thing? Like it literally gives me so much joy. So there's a few things. One is, which actually a lot of it has to go back to Instagram, which is kind of crazy, but I follow a ton of accounts that post activities. So some of them are free activities. Some of them are like pop-ups that are happening over the weekend. Some of them are activities that you have to pay for, but I follow a ton of those accounts. And I think because of that, I'm constantly getting ads for other activities. Half of my ads on Instagram are just like, oh, like I was getting a ton the other day of like, come do like glass blowing in Brooklyn. Like I've never gotten that ad. Yeah. Come make wreaths in Brooklyn. Like what, cause when you click on one, the algorithm, so then you just get a bunch of them.
If you want to make glass, you must want to make a wreath.
Correct. They are highly expensive, but still look very fun. But yeah, the Irish river dance, the Irish dance troupe, saw them, got an ad for them. And I was like, oh my God, they're coming to Radio City Music Hall. I must go. But so that's a huge thing, is just doing research. Like even I think before, I mean, I guess I didn't have Instagram until college, but even then it wasn't like as much of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so then I would literally just go online and be like, what are fun things to do in this city? What are the top things to do in this city?
There's always like those things, it's like things to do this weekend in New York City, like theater or whatever, like puts those out.
Again, living in a huge city too, it's like I moved here specifically so that I could go out and enjoy all of these things. And there's tons of things for like all different prices. Like once again, the glass blowing, it was like, you know, $140 for like 3 hours. And I was like, okay, no, no thank you. But then there's, you know, there's free pop-ups that like show up, or free classes. I think it's just a matter of researching it, of like looking things up, and also even being slightly more niche about it, of like, okay, what are free workout classes in the city, or even like my neighborhood on Tuesday? Like you can look it up and you'll find a million things. And asking people, like anytime I reach out and ask someone, everyone's always so nice and is like, oh, thank you for like thinking of me to want to go do this thing. And there's nothing wrong with getting brunch. Love a good brunch. But I'm like, the city is expensive, so it's like, okay, if I'm gonna spend, I don't know, $25 on a brunch, I could also spend that on a ticket to like an experience or an activity. And you remember those oftentimes even more. So highly recommend.
I feel like New York City specifically, there are so many free things, like especially once the weather gets nicer out, so you can walk around and see all the different like you know, I know there's an area in Brooklyn that has a lot of murals, like get a coffee, or bring a coffee, it's not even cheaper, like, and then you can walk around and then you can talk, you know, it's just other things to do besides sitting and having brunch, which we did earlier, so that's it's a fun activity, but it's nice to do other things as well.
Yes. And I actually, the woman who does the podcast, like the podcast club, she said something recently where she was like, which I had never really thought of this before, but I thought it was a really good like way of thinking of it. She was like, when you go have brunch with people, you're kind of like catching up on life.
Right.
But if you go do an activity or an experience, you are like living life with them. And I was like, that's kind of deep. That's like pretty good. You know what I mean?
That's pretty good.
Because once again, nothing wrong with a catch up. I love a catch up, but it's true. You sit and you catch up on things that the other person has done.
Yeah, what have you been up to or whatever.
Versus like, okay, we're gonna go white water rafting together. Oh. And just kidding. I hate white water rafting.
I was like in the Hudson.
Down the Hudson. We're gonna go kayaking in the Hudson.
We'll grow gills.
Yep. Go down there. But now we are doing this thing together.
A little cheers to that.
Ooh, this one's quite
Elvis. And what are your thoughts on coworkers becoming friends? I know you've successfully done this, and I view this as kind of a tricky situation, but you're very passionate, so I'm very curious how you do this.
I'm like, please ask me this question. I really love it. Now, I will say, and people in other professions might also say this, but I do think that teacher friends specifically, that is like a thing. Like we bond. Sometimes it's trauma bonding, but like we it's just such a specific job, and like you really do need other people to help you through it. It's very difficult to just be like one soldier. So I've been very lucky. At the first school that I was at, I still have 3 close friends. They were my like literal like co-teachers, like the people who were on the same team as me. And we started off just being like, you know, friendly at work and blah, blah, blah. Once again, you're seeing these people every single day. Yeah. And, you know, we would talk about all the stuff that we were dealing with the kids. And then we would talk about our own lives. And, but then we started like traveling with each other, and we did trips together, which was so fun. Like it ended up, now, of course, it depends. That's not going to be the case for everyone, but I'm at a new school now, and like all the new teachers, like we do typically like once a month, we just like get together for like a happy hour kind of thing, like outside of school, outside of work. And it's really fun and special. I've heard horror stories. There are very opposite stories to this, so I also understand that this could just be me, but I think it reminds me of like being in college or being in high school, where you're around those same people all day, every day. And you get to know people so well and on such an intimate level. So for me, I have found that friendships really work well for me if I see that person a lot. And that is a thing. Like, I think there are like scientific studies done on that like you have to be with somebody for a certain amount of time for that friendship to really stick. So for me, it's just kind of not easy as in like a lazy way, but easy of like, I'm with you all the time and we have a shared interest already. Like we have the same job. And also I feel like people who have similar jobs also have semi-similar personalities or like similar traits. And so I just kind of love it. And I would say that like, if you have the opportunity to say to a coworker, like, hey, like, it sounds so lame, but like, I have so much fun with you, like, inside of work. Would you like to get coffee with me? Would you like to go out there in the real world and hang out? And sometimes it works, and sometimes you realize
that is a big step.
It is, and it can feel kind of scary because also, like, if it doesn't work out, then it's kind of awkward. But I feel like typically you can kind of tell if it, you know, like
I feel like if you're on the other side of that, like, don't be scared to do that, because if you're on the other side and someone's like, no, we have so like, let's grab brunch this weekend, or like let's go get dinner. Like if you're on the other side, that you like feel like, oh, like you like me, like I like you too, you know. I feel like if there's no reason to be scared, because you're just gonna flatter the person, like and that's it.
And if they really don't want to hang out with you, I think once again they'll just be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm busy, or like you know, whatever it doesn't work out or whatever. But I will say that like, if you are looking for friends, to try and do that with your coworkers, because that is really special when you get to be like work friends and like real world friends. Yeah. but I know you have some different thoughts.
To rip this microphone back. No, I just feel like, so I've had some, right after college, same kind of thing where I was like, where do I go? Like, who do I hang out with? Because I used to hang out with people all the time. You live with the people you go to class with and you go to the gym with, whatever, all the things. And then I was like, now what? And so I started at a big company, Big Four. Pray for you if you're at a Big Four. And it's, so you're spending busy season, a lot of hours. You're going to trainings all together with people that you interned with. So it's all kind of a similar cohort thing. So I became really close with a couple girls. And then one of them I lived with. And while that was great in and of itself, it was like I could never escape work. And so it felt a little, or then when I was interviewing for other jobs, it was like, well, she's my friend and I want to let her in on this like life change. But I was like, but she has other friends at work too. Like it just felt like a little mucky to a point that then I was like, this is too much. It's too much. I gotta go. And so I mean, I know you're just talking about like getting coffee and I'm like living with someone, but for me, I've had mixed. And then now I'm on team with some girls that I really love, but at the end of the day, I am their manager. Yeah. And so there's like, that's tricky. It's a tough where I want to be like, oh my God, like I don't want to be here either, but also I'm their manager. Yeah. And then it's like, well, I want to hang out after work. But it's like, okay, I don't want to get like super drunk because I'm their manager. Right. Versus when I feel like kind of what you were describing, when you're at the same level, I think it's easier because there's not that inherent like self-consciousness of like, are they going to be able to be themselves around me because I like oversee them? Or are they going to view me differently if I let loose because on Monday, like I'm going to be going over their deliverables and their feedback for the year, so that's I feel like we'll add it to the tactic list of like coworkers, but I think it's something that I've struggled with where on the same level, like if you're at the same level, you're not like on the same projects or whatever company structure may be, that it's nice because everything. I wouldn't recommend living with someone because it can get to be a lot even if the person's amazing. And then for like other levels, I feel like it can be tough to navigate that and to kind of separate work from, well, you're my boss, you were telling me what to do all day. No, I don't want to grab a beer with you. Like, kind of thing.
Very good point. Because I think that's also right. Because since I'm not in the corporate world, I totally wasn't even like thinking of it that way. But I think that is maybe why specifically it works so well with teachers because basically everybody is at the same level except your principal. And like, you're not going to try and be like friends with you're friendly with your principal, but you're not going to try and be their friend. But everyone else who you're working with is either your literal co-teacher who's like in the room with you, or the other teachers on the team, or the paraprofessionals in the room. Like everyone is at the exact same level. Like I'm not anybody's boss. Like, so but if I were, then that would be tricky because of course you can't like, there's boundaries, there's lines, and you can't
and you don't want them to feel uncomfortable. Like if I'm asking like, oh, do we want to do something? It's like, I don't want anyone to feel obligated because I'm their manager. It's like, I'm just a girl that wants to hang out. So it's a tough.
That's definitely more nuanced. I can see it from both sides. I think it just must be very job dependent.
Probably cultural, dependent on like the corporation, but I feel like work is still a good place to make friends, and obviously like reading the room probably more so than other places when it comes to like what's appropriate and what's not.
Right. Or at least just to have like friends at work. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like totally. Like of course, but like that's even nice of just being able to have like
eat lunch with someone.
Your work husband or your work wife or like whatever that is. Like even if it doesn't end up leaving the building, it's at least still nice to know that you have somebody who you can like talk to and hang out with.
And you're still so close to our mutual friend Lindsay, who's gotten a lot of airtime on this.
She's the one name that's
I know. And she now lives in Boston. How do you continue to foster relationships with long distance friends? Because that's a different skill set.
Yeah, that is also really important to me. I have a handful of friends who are long distance there's like a couple from childhood, there's a couple from college, there's Lindsay, there's so a lot of the really close friends who I've made over the course of my life, I have not wanted to lose just based off of distance. Do make it a point to make sure So there's a few things. Number one, I inundate them with Instagram stories. Like, people find it unbelievably annoying. And I know that's not like real connection, but it is just like
Real?
Oh, like a reel. I was like, Insta reel. I was like, real good. But so that to me is a very quick and easy way of being like, I'm thinking of you today. Like, I think you would think this is funny. Or like,
look at this cat falling.
Yeah. Okay. Or like, I think it's funny and I really need you to also think it's funny.
Just give a reaction.
Yeah. So like, that's one thing, because that's just really quick and easy. But then also I have some group chats, I have regular things, and like just texting, even if it's like, hey, this really funny thing happened to me today. Or like, once again, this thing made me think of you. Like, I'm just letting you know. But then also calling. I am a big caller, and I do try and make sure that I call people as frequently as possible. Obviously, we're all adults. We all have really busy schedules. But, I mean, I was on the phone with somebody for 2 hours the other day. So, like, that to me is worth it. I know that for some people, it's like, maybe you don't like to call as much. Actually, I like never FaceTime. I'm just thinking of that right now.
That stresses me.
Which is so funny, because I feel like we have that, and that's like the best thing to use.
That's too vulnerable for me.
I guess. Well, I don't know. So I guess you feel like you're like locked in, because you can't be like, okay, bye.
Actually, no. There is one friend I FaceTime, but she's the only friend. So I have that one friend where like I do FaceTime with her, and she's the only one, because it's like our baseline. Like, we've always done that. Right. But she's 3 hours behind, and so I have to schedule sometimes like 2 weeks in advance, because I can't just pick up the phone and try to call her at 7 p.m. on a work night 'cause she's still working, or on the weekend, like if it's, I don't know, 10 a.m. for me and I'm ready for a call, like she's asleep. So I think that's, something to not shy away from, like the scheduling of it.
As sad as it is to sort of say that out loud necessarily, it's like when you do get older, you just sadly don't have as much time to be friends with everyone. Like, I wish that I could. I wish I could be friends with everybody, and that would be amazing, but you just have less hours in the day. So, making time for people who you love and support, and who love and support you, and are, good energy, if you will, like, make you feel like if you hang out with them and they make you feel good, and vice versa, then like that's super important. Do you watch Sex Lives of College Girls?
No. Okay.
It's such a great, they're in college, so it is very different, but like, that's like the whole point of the show, is just like navigating all these different friendships. And I mean, it does all in the show and in life, right? It always comes back to that thing of like, who are your core people? Like, who are the people who are not going to judge you, who are going to be there to support you, who are funny, lifts you up, all those things. And like, I feel like when you're in your 20s, honestly, maybe even more like your late 20s, early 30s, I feel like that really is when you find your group, because even when you're in college, you might be friends with some people because you just happen to be in the same class, or you happen to be in the same club or whatever. But then when you're really like out there on your own and you have to pick who you want to be with, it's like, it feels more special. Yeah.
If you only, like on the weekend, if you only have, really 8 hours of hangout ability time.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's like brunch each day, or like a couple hours for drinks or whatever it is. It's like, you gotta pick who you want to spend that time with. It's not like they're built in and like, well, I'm gonna see them all the time, so can't escape them kind of thing. So you can be more purposeful with who you spend your time with, but also you have to be more purposeful with that. You have to schedule. You have to look at things to do. You have to reach out to people and all that.
Thank you so much, Dakota, for taking the time.
Oh, it was so fun.
For coming on our way and talking over some Madelines and oysters, doing a little bit of oversharing on making friends in your 20s and 30s. The network you've built for yourself is a testament to not only the effort you continue to put in, but also you as such a warm person. So many people want to hang out with you and do random activities. Friends are so important as you get older, and we all need people to lean on outside of our families and partners. And I think a big thing we've talked about today is just like putting in the time, and don't be nervous about putting yourself out there. And that's so important now we're in our 30s, and I feel like I've just started being like, I could do it. And so
that's what people say, like your 30s are when you finally kind of figure it out.
Yeah. And so like, even if you're, in your 20s starting to flex that muscle and you don't feel confident, I feel like that's fine and that's normal. And even in your 30s, if you're still kind of, but it's like, it's helpful to see that, you can do it. Like, there's people that like you, and like people you want to like spend time with and hang out with. So on that note, if you did like
us and listening to us, please like and subscribe, as well as leave a comment below with any advice you may have on making friends in your 20s and 30s. Thank you.